Good morning. Welcome to Ask the Admin by iBailey. Thank you for joining us today as we go through our topic and start with a little bit of a new format for these sessions. I hope this is very beneficial for everybody. So today I will be a presenter along with Frederick Barron. I'm a solution architect with iBailey, and Fred is a technical architect. We're here with us. If you have any questions, feel free to send those over to us through the questions pane, or feel free to raise your hand if you'd like, and we'll unmute you and let you talk with us as well. We're happy to do that either way. We are expecting these to be interactive sessions and hope for lots of participation from both sides as we go. All right, today we are going to be talking about setting up Visualforce pages and working on sites without community. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn the time over to Fred to take us through setting this up.
All right, thanks, John. A couple of weeks ago, we got this question, and really this is one of those questions that there's a lot more here than we could have answered in that training at the time. So we decided to kind of go through this, and we're going to show you how to do this. And as John said, if you have any questions, whether they're related to this or not, go ahead and ask them, and we will answer whatever questions we can. If we don't have enough time, we will schedule another Ask the Admin to get those questions answered for you. So some of the things that we're going to do here, we're going to set up a public-facing site using Force.com. We're going to add some pages to it, and then we're going to make sure that our security is locked down. You don't want to have, especially on a public-facing site, you don't want your security open on that. So we're going to jump right into the org, and we are going to get started here. So what I've got here, I've got a brand new org. Nothing has been done on this yet. Let me step back a second. I have added a Visualforce page so that we don't have to take the time to build that all out. So we're going to start by going into Site. We're going to set up our site. See if this comes up here. It's just taking a little while to load. While that's loading, let's just kind of talk about why we would want to use, that's not the right one anyway. Okay, why we would want to use a public-facing site with with Salesforce. The advantage is that you can create forms for your users to enter information. They go straight into Salesforce. You can also pull information from Salesforce and put them right on the page. Okay, so now here we are. This is our site set up. The first thing that we're going to do is we are going to pick a domain name. Now, one of the things that's very important about this is that when you do this, whatever you choose here, you cannot change. So make sure you really think about what you want this domain name to be. So I'm going to pick a domain name here. I'm going to check availability. It's going to tell me that that's available. And if it's already taken, you'll have to pick another one. I'm going to agree to the terms. I'm going to go ahead and register my domain. It's going to give me that warning again, making sure, I absolutely want to do this. And that's going to take just a couple of seconds to register. Now, once it's registered, this is going to be the domain name for our site. If we have our own domain name, you might have yourcompany.com. You want to forward it to this, or maybe support.yourcompany.com. There's ways to do that. We can't do it today because we can't do it in a developer sandbox. You will have to contact Salesforce to get that functionality turned on. still working on registering. All right, there it goes. Okay, so now we have our domain. I'm going to create a new site. I'm going to give it a name. The site name is your API name. You're only going to need that if you're going to deal with this through code. Your site contact, this is the person that's going to be emailed if there's any issues with the site. You can do a default web address. I'm going to leave this the way it is, or we could do, we could add support to the end of it. I'm just going to leave it. So atademo.force.com is going to be our site here. I'm going to make it active, and I'm going to choose a home page. Now, I created a page earlier, this one right here called New Case, so that we didn't have to go through creating the Visualforce page today. There's a couple more options here. You can set an end maintenance page inactive. So if you go in here and you uncheck this box, it's going to go to this end maintenance page. So it's a very quick way to set your site to end maintenance. You have a site template. This is used if you want to set up specific style sheets for your site. The robots, favorite icons, some other stuff in here. We'll go through all of this. One of the other things I wanted to talk about is a ClickJet. You can define if it's going to be framed by any page. So if you do this, then any page on the internet can frame your website, which isn't very good. They can use some scripting to actually capture information that goes through that page. Framing by the same page origin only, that would be, it has to be coming from our same atademo.force.com, or we cannot allow any framing, which would give you the most protection. You could also require HTTPS, so we're requiring a secure connection. And this one here, this last one, we're not going to check this. Guest access to the support API has to be turned on if this is a community and you want anonymous guests to be able to submit support cases. This would have to be turned on. Since this is not a community, we're going to go ahead and leave that off. I'm going to go ahead and save that. All right, now our site is set up. We are ready to go. Let me go through a couple of things here before we go in and preview our site. So you've got the information up here. This is from creating the site. You can create custom URLs, so we can add different URLs to this site. The site Visualforce pages, if we create new pages, you see our new case is already here because that's the one I selected as the home page. If this links to another page, let's say we had a thank you page, I would have to go in here and edit this and add that page, or your users, your guest users, are not going to be able to see it. We've got error pages that we can change, and then your usage history. So to view this site, I'm just going to simply click on this link right here. Sorry, wrong link. I'm going to copy this link, and I'm going to open it up. I'm going to open it in a new tab. All right, while that's loading, do we have any questions?
Yeah, we've got one question from Jeff here. That guest API access, can you use that without a community?
You, no. So this does not give your guest user access to the standard Salesforce API. This gives them access to the support API. Really, all that does is it gives them access to create cases. So you could use this. It doesn't really give your guests any additional. I'm trying to say it doesn't really give them any additional permissions on a site. You could open this up and let them create cases through an API. Normally, you wouldn't do that. It's kind of a security issue. You have to really trust who you're giving access to that, because they could just flood your system with bogus cases. You could do it, but I would highly recommend against it. If you need to have API access where somebody can create cases through an API, I would do it where they actually have to log in and authenticate, so that you know who's doing it. All right, so we are getting authorization required on our site. So let's go in and check our permissions here. So we've got the new case on our page. We should be good there. And we're going to go into public access settings. Now this is the, we're going to get into the security here. The support profile, this is the profile that your guest users are going to be using. So you can go in here and set up their security through this profile. I'm going to come down here. I want to make sure the reason why we're getting that is this page creates a case. So we're going to make sure that we turn on create. I'm going to leave everything else turned off. I don't want our guests to have access to anything else. And that should be it. So it's pretty simple. You're going to use your profile the same way as you do everything else. Lock down your profile as tight as you need to, especially with the guest profile, because with the guest profile, there is no password. They're not logging in. Anybody can access this guest profile. Let's go ahead here and refresh this page, and we'll see what happens here. It's taking a little while to load. And there we go. So now I have access to this page because I've given the guest profile access to cases. And what this page does is really, really simple. I'm going to put a subject in here, and I am going to put in a description. We're running out of caffeine, send more soda. I'm going to hit save. And you'll see here, authorization required. Now, and I'll tell you why this came out. It's because of how I have my page set up. I have it to redirect back to the case. What we would do in a real life situation is we redirect this to a thank you page. I didn't have time to get that thank you page created. So we're just going straight to the case. This page works from internal. But I would modify that to go to a thank you page if I was going to put that into production. Okay, here's our case in our system. And there we go. Now we've got everything in there ready to go. You could add more fields. This would be a developer side. You'd add more fields to this. You could add contact name, email, whatever you need to this. So one of the questions that came up before is, why would you do it this way? Why would you create a Visualforce page instead of just using web to case? And one of the advantages to this, I'm going to pull back up my Visualforce page. Actually, instead of the Visualforce page, we're going to go into the code behind it. Don't get too worried about the code. Where is my code? There it is. So one of the advantages to this, with web to case, it just puts the information into your org. With this one, we could do some very custom things. I've got some code in here, but we could do some validation in the code. We could also do a multi-step process where they come in, they might put in a subject, they hit the button, and then we can do a lookup just like Salesforce does. We're looking for duplicate cases, for knowledge-based articles. You can really get complicated with how you do this, depending on how much development work that you want to do. That is the basics of setting up a Visualforce site with force.com. There is a little bit of development work that you'll have to do this. One of the things you could do, we've done this on our other site, is we just simply copied the web to case. You get the web to case HTML generator. And we just copied this HTML that this generates into a Visualforce page. And now, again, this would work just like any other web to case. You're really just capturing the information, sending it to Salesforce, and then Salesforce's backend would take care of everything else. You got the code there. That is it. So let's go back to any questions. Does anybody have any questions on what we covered today? Or we've got extra time that we can answer any of your questions about Salesforce.
Yeah, we've got, looks like one more question coming in here, asking about how long does it take to build up a Visualforce page generally, just like a basic case Visualforce page?
That is an excellent question. Let me show you the page itself and kind of give you an idea. And this is a very, very basic page. As you saw, I only had 2 fields on this page. The only thing that I'm doing is I'm saving them. There's absolutely no validation. There's nothing else happening on that page. So here's this page. It's very, very simple, very short. And this page took about, there's 2 parts to this. One is the Visualforce itself, which is really HTML. And then you have the Apex code behind it. This page took me about 30 minutes to build both pieces of that. And again, this is a really, really simple page. Typically, when we're doing Visualforce pages, depending on the complexity of it, we're looking at anywhere from 5 hours to about 20 hours for the really complex pages. Part of that is the page itself, the code behind it. And then the other thing that I haven't done on this one is I haven't created a test class for the code. Anytime that you're creating code in in Salesforce, you have to have tests. And then it'd take me probably about another 30 minutes to build the tests for this. So probably about an hour for this page here. Again, this is a very, very simple page. With our clients, typically, like I said, we're looking at about 5 hours for a basic page, and all the way up to usually about 20 hours for the very, very complex pages. It's a great question. All right, do we have any other questions about Salesforce that we can answer for you today?
I don't see any other questions coming in today.
Okay. One of the questions that I just remembered, we had this a couple of weeks ago. Let me address this real quick. Is leads? Can you do this? Can we capture leads from the web? And we can do that. Same thing. We can do a web to lead, or we can do the same thing that we did here and build out our force. We build out the form to capture all of that data and just save it straight into the lead. Again, when we're doing that, we have to make sure that our site is set up. Go back to the site here, that we have our permission set up. Now, site users have they're in what they can access. I'm going to go back into my site, go back into my access settings. And you'll see here, as I was talking about, they're limited. They can't edit cases. They can't edit account contacts. You can create all of these. So we'd have to turn on create leads, and we could create a lead capture form that opportunities, orders, quotes. So there's all this that they can see, but there's quite a bit that they can't do.
Now this is only listing standard objects. Will custom objects show up here and be available for the same type of permission options?
They will. Let me create it's a great question. Let me create a custom object here real quick. I don't have any custom objects created in this org yet, but let's create one. So we'll just go through this real quick. I'm going to leave everything default. I'm not going to add any custom fields, just I don't think we need to go through that in this training. You could get to this profile going through the profiles like you do any other profile. I just think it's a little bit easier instead of looking through all the profiles. Of course, on this site, I've probably only got 3 or 4. I've got the standard profiles, and then I'll have this one, so it probably wouldn't be too hard to do. So now you'll see down here I've got custom object permissions. Go down there and give this user access, or this profile access to it. So now I've got my custom object permissions, and on this one, on the custom objects, you can give your guest user full permissions: read, create, edit, delete. Again, you've got to be really careful with how you open this up, because if you give them edit and delete, anybody has access to that. They do not have to log in to delete your record. Where you would lock this down is in your Visualforce pages. You can do it where they'd have to have a specific thing. You may have seen it. Craigslist does this. If you post a listing on Craigslist and you're not logged in, they'll send you a link and they'll tell you don't share this with anybody. That gives you the edit ability. If anybody else was able to get that link, they could go in and edit that. We can give them the same permissions. We can give them a read and create. And then we could create our form to create our sodas. Or if we wanted to, this could be anything. This could be maybe an FAQ records or whatever we want to do. We've actually got articles down here, FAQs. We can use standard functionality for that. But we can't give them custom object permissions. It's a great question. Thank you. All right. If we don't have any more questions, it looks like we've answered some of them. Now, there were a couple of questions that came in the registrations. One of them about how to handle leads being converted and then the accounts churning is one of the questions. In 2 weeks, we're going to really go into depth in leads, contacts, accounts, and best practices in how to handle those. That's going to be an entire training. So if you want to learn that, we're going to be talking about that in 2 weeks. And we'll spend about the same amount of time, about 20, 30 minutes, going through how you handle your leads, contacts, accounts. How do you handle that sales process? And we're going to have a sales expert join us that week specifically to talk about that. So you'll be able to get some really good insight into best practices for a sales process. And that concludes this week. Thank you for joining us. And again, we will be back in 2 weeks to answer more of your questions. Thank you.